He told me he was working late again. That was the third Thursday in a row, and I was standing in our kitchen at 7 in the evening with a warm dish of his favorite pot roast, the one that takes 4 hours to make, wrapped in foil and packed into a bag like a peace offering for a war I didn't even know we were fighting yet. I wasn't suspicious. I want to be clear about that. I was a good wife. I was the kind of woman who memorized her husband's schedule, who kept the house running like a quiet machine, who never showed up unannounced because I respected boundaries. But that night, something in me just shifted. Maybe it was the way he'd kissed me goodbye that morning. Too fast, too distracted, his eyes already somewhere else. Maybe it was the silence on the other end of the phone when I called at 6 to ask if he wanted me to save him a plate. 3 seconds of silence before he said, "Don't bother, I'll grab something here." 3 seconds. I've replayed that pause 1,000 times since. So I packed the pot roast anyway. I drove 40 minutes across the city to surprise him. Marcus and I had been married for 9 years. 9 years of building something together from almost nothing. We met when I was 29 and he was 32, both of us fresh out of difficult pasts and certain, absolutely certain, that we had found the real thing. He was charming in the way that feels earned, not performed. He coached youth basketball on Saturday mornings. He called his mother every Sunday. He made me feel, for a very long time, like I was the luckiest woman in any room I walked into. I gave up a promotion in Cincinnati to stay in Columbus when his career took off. I worked part-time for 3 years while our son Caleb was small, because Marcus said it was better for the family, and I believed him. I handled the school runs, the dentist appointments, the parent-teacher conferences, the grocery lists, the birthday cards, the holiday dinners, the dry cleaning, the plumber, the electrician, all of it, while he climbed. And I was proud of him. I want you to know that. I was genuinely, sincerely proud of everything he built. His company, a mid-sized commercial real estate firm, had moved into a new high-rise downtown 2 years prior. 14th floor, glass everywhere. The kind of office that announces itself. I had been there exactly twice, once for a company holiday party and once to drop off documents he'd forgotten. Both times, the lobby staff had been warm and welcoming. Both times, they'd sent me right up. Both times, apparently, he hadn't yet given the order. The security guard's name was Dennis. I could see it on his badge. He was polite, genuinely polite, and I could tell the moment he recognized me that he wished he were anywhere else on earth. "Mrs. Carter," he said, and the way he said it, with that particular kind of careful, practiced neutrality, told me everything before the next sentence came out of his mouth. "Mr. Carter has a standing instruction. No visitors are to be sent up without prior approval from his assistant." I looked at him. I held the bag with the pot roast. I could smell it through the foil, rosemary and garlic and 9 years of a life I thought I knew. "I'm his wife," I said. "Yes, ma'am, I know." "Does the instruction include his wife?" Dennis didn't blink. "It says no visitors, ma'am. I'm sorry." I stood there for a moment. I thought about calling Marcus right then, letting him know I was downstairs, giving him the chance to say, "Come on up, sweetheart, what a nice surprise." I thought about turning around, driving home, putting the pot roast in the refrigerator, and pretending this feeling in my chest was nothing. Instead, I smiled at Dennis. I thanked him for doing his job. And I sat down on the leather bench against the lobby wall, and I waited. I texted Marcus nothing, not a single word. I just sat there with the pot roast in my lap, watching the elevator doors. 14 minutes in, I started to understand the geometry of what I was inside. The lobby had 2 elevators and a stairwell exit. The building's parking garage connected to a side entrance near the revolving doors. I wasn't surveilling anything. I was just sitting very still, the way you sit when your body knows something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. 26 minutes in, Dennis brought me a cup of water without being asked. He set it on the bench beside me without making eye contact. That small, wordless kindness cracked something open in me, and I had to breathe very carefully for a moment so that I wouldn't cry in a lobby. 38 minutes in, my phone buzzed. It was Marcus. Wrapping up soon, don't wait up. I stared at that message. Wrapping up, don't wait up. I set the phone face down on my knee and I looked at the elevator. 41 minutes after I sat down, the elevator on the left opened. Marcus stepped out first. His jacket was on, but his tie was loosened. That specific, telling kind of loosened. Not the way a man looks after a long day of meetings, but the way a man looks when he's been somewhere warm and close and private. His hair was slightly off. Not messy, just slightly, carefully rearranged. Behind him, stepping out half a second later, adjusting the strap of her bag, was a woman I recognized. Her name was Simone. She was 27 years old. She was his company's director of client relations. I had met her at that holiday party 2 years ago. She had shaken my hand with both of hers and told me how much she admired everything Marcus had shared about me. She was wearing a silk blouse the color of champagne. She smelled, I would later learn from the scarf Marcus left on the passenger seat of his car, like Lancôme La Vieille Belle. They were laughing at something when the doors opened. That's what I'll never be able to unsee. Not the guilt on his face when he looked up and found me sitting there. Not Simone's hand dropping from his arm like it had been burned. It was the laugh. It was the ease of it. The complete, unguarded ease of a man who had no idea his entire life was about to turn a corner. Renee. His voice landed somewhere between greeting and apology. I stood up slowly. I picked up the bag. I brought pot roast, I said. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at Simone, who was studying the floor with enormous concentration. This isn't what it looks like, he said. He actually said those words. In the year of our Lord, with his tie loosened and her perfume in the air, he looked me in the eye and said that. I handed Dennis the bag of pot roast on my way out. I told him to share it with whoever was on shift. He thanked me very quietly. I drove home, I put Caleb to bed, and then I sat at the kitchen table until 2 a.m, very still, very calm, making a list. Marcus came home at midnight, full of explanations. She was a colleague. They had been working late. The instruction about visitors was an old one, a general policy, nothing personal, nothing to do with me. He sat across from me and he talked for 45 minutes, and every single word out of his mouth was a small, precisely constructed lie, and I let him talk because I needed to know how far he was willing to go. You're reading into nothing, he said. You always do this. You've always been insecure about my work relationships, and I've told you 100 times, it's exhausting. There it was, that word, insecure, the one designed to make me fold the map and go home. You're right, I said. I'm sorry, I just missed you. He relaxed. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. He told me the pot roast was a sweet thought. I smiled and went to bed. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I photographed every document in his home office. Bank statements, credit card bills, a lease agreement I had never seen for an apartment on the east side of the city. A 12-month lease, signed 8 months ago, monthly rent of $2,200. I stood there in his office in my bathrobe doing the math. 8 months times $2,200 equaled $17,600 that had moved out of our joint finances through an account I hadn't known existed. I had 6 weeks before our 10th anniversary. I used every one of them. I hired a forensic accountant. I hired a private investigator. I hired a divorce attorney named Patricia Holt, who had been described to me by 3 separate people as, quote, a velvet sledgehammer. I opened my own accounts, quietly transferred my protected assets, and I documented everything with the patience and precision of a woman who had stopped crying and started planning. The private investigator confirmed what I already knew within 10 days. Marcus and Simone had been together for 14 months. The apartment was hers, funded primarily by him. He had taken her to Scottsdale for a long weekend in February, the same weekend he told me the conference had run over. He had spent $6,300 on that trip, using a credit card linked to a business account I had no visibility into. I gathered everything into a single folder. I labeled it with his initials. I gave a copy to Patricia. Then I waited 3 more weeks, because Patricia told me to, because timing in these situations is everything. I served him on a Tuesday, not at home, not on a weekend. I served him at his office on the 14th floor in the middle of a meeting with 4 of his largest clients. Patricia's process server walked in at 2:15 in the afternoon while Marcus was presenting Q3 projections and placed the divorce petition on the table in front of him. He called me 12 times in the next hour. I answered on the 13th. "Renee, what the hell?" "Marcus," I said, "I want you to listen carefully because I'm only going to say this once. Patricia Holt has filed for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial misconduct. The forensic accounts are complete. The apartment lease is documented. The credit card statements cover 19 months of expenditures on your girlfriend's lifestyle. The court date is set. I would strongly encourage you to find a very good attorney." Silence. "I sat in that lobby for 41 minutes, I said. "I smiled at the security guard. I brought you pot roast. And the whole time, I already knew." I hung up. The settlement took 4 months to finalize. I received the house, which we owned outright, valued at $610,000. I received 60% of all joint investment accounts. I received sole legal and physical custody of Caleb, with supervised visitation for Marcus, pending a separate family court review. I received a sum in spousal support that Patricia described simply as appropriate given the documented deception. Simone, for what it's worth, ended the relationship with Marcus approximately 6 weeks after the filing. I heard through mutual friends that she hadn't known he was still fully married, still living at home, still sharing a bed with his wife. He had told her we were separated, that we hadn't been close in years. I believe her. Marcus was very, very good at building separate worlds and keeping them from touching. He is currently renting an apartment across town. He drives a different car now. The good one was in my name. He coaches youth basketball on Saturday mornings still, I'm told. Some habits outlast everything. I took Caleb to New York City for spring break, just the 2 of us. We saw a Broadway show. We ate at a restaurant where the pasta cost $32 and was worth every single cent. On the last night, sitting at a small table near a window with the city doing what cities do outside the glass, my son looked at me and said, "Mom, you seem different. Like, happy different." I am 41 years old. I own my home. I sleep in the center of my bed. I have a glass of very good wine on Friday evenings, and I answer to no one. The last time Marcus called, not to discuss Caleb, just to call, he said he thought we could have handled things differently. He said he'd been going through a difficult period. He said he missed his family. I told him I hoped he found peace. Then I blocked the number. Some women fall apart when they find out who their husband really is. I understand that completely. I was on that floor too, for about 48 hours. But then something shifts. Something cold and clear and unbreakable moves in, and you realize the woman you've been all along. Organized, patient, capable, and absolutely done being underestimated is exactly the woman this moment requires. He thought leaving orders at the front desk would keep his worlds from colliding. He forgot that I'm the one who taught him the value of patience. I sat in that lobby for 41 minutes and I never once raised my voice. I didn't need to.